Hi, welcome to the first edition, actually the 11th edition of the first course or the first part of the Wisdom Workshop. We have two real goals today. One is to start to build some sense of community, and the other is to kind of have some fun exploring what it is that we're doing. And our first really big prompt or challenge is invitation. I'm not sure how we want to say this, and this gets right to the heart of this course. How we talk to ourselves about what's going on is a powerful component of how we experience what's going on. Do we agree with the statement? I didn't go to college because I thought college was a sham. And then I found an instructor I really liked, and then I went to college, and college is no longer a sham. So just like that's a small example, but those things kind of happen, right? What I'd like to do is play with our relationship to writing and the process of writing. I'm curious if we've done a mindful free writing practice before, or I'm sorry, let me back up. Have we done mindfulness exercises or familiar with mindfulness? Some do like how would we define mindfulness? What is it? What is it? And note, there's actually, people define it in different ways. So we're trying to get a group definition that we can agree with. Yeah, Mark.
Maybe bringing attention to, sort of in a Zen fashion, bringing attention to what your experience is, sort of like trying to bring awareness.
We're going to go with attention as the key word. And awareness is maybe another attention awareness. We could put awareness of the present moment.
I think for me, it feels like I'm observing my mind, my thoughts, my body, but without any judgment. Yeah, like I'm watching. Yeah.
There's that gets to the key parts of it for me. We have attentional awareness of the present moment, and then it's non-reactive or non-judgmental. So if we're noticing something come up, we're just noticing it. This is why also mindfulness is not about not thinking. It's about noticing the thoughts that are arising and not noticing them like, Sean, this old thought again. Or on the contrary, ooh, what a nice thought. It's just, thought. This is the foundational, that's kind of our goal for this week. The focus is on presence. It's also, I called this unlearning because this is not the goal of traditional education. The goal of traditional education is to get to some outcome, to pass some test, to demonstrate some knowledge that you can do something. It's outcome oriented. Also, oh yeah, so you can get a job, so you can do this other thing, so you can do that. We're doing the exact opposite. No outcome, just presence. At least as an experiment. This might be a terrible thing to do, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay, no, trying to not judge it as good or bad. We're just trying to be aware, to noticing this. Okay. Second question, have we done any free writing? Like writing in a journal without not writing to publish or just writing to just free write. 5 being I do it all every day, 1 being, or 0 being I've never done it. Yeah, 0 or 1. Okay, here's the rules for free writing. The goal is don't write well. Okay, you're not trying to create something that is valuable or that you're going to share, or this is only a way to what's in your head. I'm actually going to add heart. I'm going to add body onto the page. Natalie Goldberg, we're going to use her rules. Grammar doesn't matter. So we have some rules here. Number 1, grammar, spelling, handwriting, doesn't matter. please, Mark. Yeah.
Any preference when we do these exercises? Is it more valuable to do it handwritten?
I think
or
I think
typed?
I think research shows that it is more valuable to do handwritten, but there's exceptions to that research. I would say whatever makes you feel more comfortable, honestly. Like if you're going to feel more comfortable typing, you might also experiment, do some of them handwritten and some of them typed. And if you like the typed one more, then go for it. Thanks for that question. Two, just keep writing. If that means like, boy, oh boy, I'm really hitting a wall here. I have no idea what to say. You might just talk about like where you are. Like look around and be like, boy, that wall is very white. Yep, wall's still white. You know what white walls make me think of? Isn't that restaurant like what? That's what it's kind of. You're just go. Okay. Her third rule is really interesting. We had someone that English wasn't their first language, so they learned the word jugular. Go for the jugular. Julia Cameron has one like this as well, like write what's most alive. The jugular is a lot of blood flows through your jugular. So I'm going to give us free writing prompts, a lot of them. You are free to ignore all of them and just write what is most alive for you at the moment. We also do this as a timed exercise. And I think this is really helpful, especially when you start. We're going to go for 10 minutes. You might find that 3 minutes is a good length of time, or 5 or 7. Or if you do, if you get into this, I would encourage you to set aside a half an hour and try to write for 20 minutes out of that half an hour. So give yourself 10 minutes to kind of like drift, and then come back to the page. Notice, and this is a mindful practice. I'm noticing I'm drifting. I'm noticing I'm drifting, period. And now I'm coming back to, yes, thank you, Mark. And now I'm coming back to the page. Okay, shit, that's all I have to say. Totally okay. I'm not judging myself because I'm trying to practice. I'm not trying to practice. I'm just bringing my attention back to the present moment, to what's most alive. You know what this makes me think of? Cool. We're going to explore over the next 7 weeks a lot of different ways to use writing. This way, where you're just dumping whatever is in here onto the page, may be the most effective, but it might not be for you. It's different for everybody. I'm just going to share a ton of things with you that you kind of get to choose, experiment what works and what doesn't. But I do want to give us about 10 minutes to play with this as an exercise. Does that make sense?
Okay.
All right. I'm going to give you some questions to start with. And they're small questions. The first one is, who are you? Just like, how would you describe yourself? Say maybe what you care about. And it's not, you don't need to. Honestly, again, if you want to shy away from that, don't do that. But I find like telling myself about myself is sometimes generative. Next one is, what is the good life? And that one's the more kind of interesting one for our purposes. So I'm curious about writing a little bit. If you imagine what the good life is, what kind of things come to mind? I would maybe start with that question and see, so I'm giving you don't need to write on both of them or either of them. But I am curious for our purposes today, what is the good life? What does it look like? How would you imagine that? Cool, we'll go until 21 after. Let's mute ourselves in case there's background noise. If you want to mute your video because you don't want people to see you write, that's fine. I generally don't mute my video, but you can do whatever feels fine, whatever is good for you. Don't mind the interruption. Nicole has been invited to this group. We are not about to get bombed or whatever they call it. And we're going to write for another 5 minutes or reflect for another 5 minutes on what is the good life or whatever else is coming alive to you at this point. And then we will reconvene in 5 minutes. All right, I hate to interrupt seeing people write. I'm going to. I want to shift a little bit to introductions and some community building. If we could share, looks like everybody has the name that we want to go by, but just say your name, where you're from. Whoops, name, where you're calling in from. Maybe any roles and titles that you have, if you want to, if you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. And then what you said about the good life. What is the good life? So kind of sharing the, who are you and what are you doing here? Who are you and what is a good life? I also want to thank Nicole for joining in. I thought of her at the last minute when this group was starting to form, but I really,
Hi, guys.
hi, Nicole. I thought of, I'm going to speak about you in the third person because you're the only person I've known before this call, as someone who's incredibly sharp and kind. And so I think she'll be a wonderful addition to this group. I'm hoping it'll also have a nice little bit more balance, and 5's a good number. So we'll see. She's kind of on trial to see if this works. This is why you're not on video, I'm imagining, as well, because you knew about this 10 minutes before we started. Okay, awesome. Let's introduce each other, or introduce ourselves to each other. Sorry to introduce you to the group, besides saying that I think you're awesome. So does anybody want to go first?
I could.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. I like how you said titles. So I'm Mark. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A dear friend told me about this class, Sean, Diana Ruiz.
Awesome.
She had a
She's
great
amazing.
experience with it.
She's great.
And, yeah, she's my wife's closest friend, and I've known her a long time. Anyway, so titles are fun. I have the title of dad. I became a dad again recently, so that's been exciting. Our little one's just 2.5 months, and we have a 5-year-old who's going into kindergarten.
Congrats.
Thank you. Titles. So professionally, I work in sales, in business development, and what I sell are analytical software and solutions, primarily for the insurance industry, looking at the risk of these natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes and floods, oh my. And I help companies think about the consequences of these large events, and the money is sort of what's at risk, and how they can make thoughtful investments and or protections, also to stay primarily to stay solvent, so that the whole enterprise of you buy insurance for your home or your car, and if they manage the business well, they can make you whole when you need to call them on that rainy day. No pun intended. Other titles: soccer fan and want to be writer. I mean, I think I want writing to be more a part of my life. I think that's why Deanna recommended this class. And but I've failed to take action on this. And I thought, wait, the structure around a class might be perfect.
Perfect.
So, sorry, I probably said more than my fair share, but those. Oh, the good life.
Oh yeah.
The good life. One where you're engaged, where you get to contribute to others' experiences, and some of those I get by default now that I have my own little family. But I don't know. I'm a pretty happy person. I find the world kind of amazing and stimulating, and I sort of want to engage with all ideas all at once. And I want to find, I guess I just want to find productive ways to engage in storytelling and consumption of stories. I sort of can't get enough of other people's stories and experiences. And it's probably enough to say for now. Thanks for letting me take the floor for so long.
I appreciate your sensitivity to how long you're speaking, and I don't think you were talking too long. It's a helpful, at least in this context. So thanks for being sensitive and bringing your
Thanks for
happiness.
having me. It's nice to meet fellow travelers, people who want to do something.
I agree, and it's nice to hear your goals, and that Deanna, she's amazing. So thanks for telling us all that. Does anybody else want to say anything about that? Actually, anything that Mark said?
Congratulations
Yeah.
on your new baby. I mean, I think
Thank
that's
you.
pretty significant. So,
It is. It is.
pretty
She's the whole
significant.
gravitational center for our lives. And
Yes.
she's adorable. If you guys stick around in this class, I'll probably foist pictures of her on you at some point and just make you do the obligatory ooh and ah. She's a pretty little creature. She's awesome. Yeah.
I also can do some picture foisting, and I have also had my center of gravity shifted.
Oh,
We're at 6 months in almost for our
Oh,
first.
oh wow. Congrats.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, and
It
your
is.
first. That
Yeah.
is a gravitational shift. That is.
Giant.
Can I just have it if Nicole or Charlie or Luna have little people in their lives? Okay, not now.
don't.
Well, none of my own, but I do have plenty of little people in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. When I first became
That's
an
the way
uncle,
to do it.
that was my it was meaningful beginnings of that. Yeah, that's cool. Neat. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate. I just want to give you a note of praise that I really appreciate how you've showed up in the group so far today. You've done a lot to kind of make it easy with the the questions and so thank you. Someone else want to go, or I can go? Charlie, please. Thanks.
Okay, so I am currently kind of like, I'm a chemistry student from OSU. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I heard about this class from my mom.
Michelle.
And yep. And let's see, I don't really have any titles or anything like that. I mean, still 23 and I'm still haven't quite finished my undergraduate education yet. I have like very little left to go, like less, maybe like 5 credit hours left, but things kind of got messed up because of COVID.
Yeah. Great.
And good life for me, I would say, would be to spend my life kind of continuing to learn more about the fields that interest me
Awesome.
and trying to be just a kind and thoughtful person, like having some kind of positive impact on people around me. And more like specifically of like what that would kind of look like would likely be going on to get my PhD in chemistry, studying mostly organic chemistry compounds and various like complex molecules and how they work in large systems.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I just hear how difficult chemistry is from all my students at college. They're all like, I'm like, how's it going? And they're all like, chemistry. Ugh.
That's the thing for me, I don't know why it is, but like everybody who's always like thought like chemistry is like hard or whatever, like for me, it's like the easiest, most fun thing in the world, especially
There you
organic.
go. Find the
always-
work to you that feels like play. If you can do that with chemistry. Oof. I can't do that. And I love math.
My big
Wow.
problem, like I don't have any kind of concept whatsoever on like what kind of career I'd actually want to have or use that for. It's like I know that I enjoy doing research based on like time that I've spent working in a research lab. Because I've spent a decent amount of time working in an organic chemistry research lab as part of my undergraduate education. But beyond like just enjoying doing research, I don't really know like what kind of career I'd want to ever like have.
Charlie, I feel very strongly about what I'm about to say. I think the idea that you should know what career you're going into in your early 20s or early 30s is absurd, patently absurd. I think it makes a lot more sense to not know what you're going to do because it keeps you open to the opportunities that you literally didn't even know existed from the conversation you had with the person that you didn't even know was involved in this thing that you didn't even know was there. And now all of a sudden, so I wouldn't, I know it's like our culture is like, what are you going to do? 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 And I just feel like being like, I don't know. And that's actually a good place to be. Pardon, maybe flipping people off isn't the right thing to do, but that's
The
kind
good
of
life.
yeah, the good life is throwing to fuck everybody up and just riding
Sometimes
hard.
I have to say, I don't know, and it's good. It's fine.
That's right. So I don't know. I'm curious. We'll see. That's also, one of the foundational texts that inspired this class is Bill Burnett and Dave Evans' Designing Your Life. And it's linked in the syllabus, and they're big into this. You don't really know until you try stuff. And so the more prototypes you run, the more you're going to get some perspectives on where, well, this prototype was terrible except for this 5% thing I really liked. And then that opens up to a new. So you basically, and the other thing I really love that you said, and I'll end here, is this, learning more about what interests you. That's really what I hope this course is about. Ultimately, is about like learning agency, about using your tools to learn in whatever way makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Which is so awesome, man. Seems like you're in a good place to me, or at least to be here. Anyone else want to say anything nice to Charlie? Or anything to Charlie?
I love the passion I can hear in your voice about enjoying what you do. I don't know if I experienced that in the same way back in my undergraduate program.
It's rare.
You're in a good spot. I think you can teach a lot of other skills, but you can't teach passion. Passion is the thing we have to kind of mine for. So if you've already got that, you've already got like this very powerful thing. So
One weird thing about my education is like I've had like a very weird kind of like mix of my educations, of where in high school I took pretty much all college classes, all AP level classes. And then when I got to college, like a lot of this, I pretty much had all like my prereqs done and stuff. So then it became just about like chemistry, but then, which was like fun in a lot of ways, but it also was like way too much in a lot of other ways.
Yeah.
And that COVID hit, that combination of like only taking like the hardest of the hard classes, plus like
Being isolated from other people and like the things that make it worthwhile otherwise.
nightmarish situation you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Like I've done like a lot of like graduate level work too, even like undergrad. So like I'm in this weird place where like I don't have a degree, but like my education is like well beyond like a typical like undergraduate, or even like is well within the range of most graduate students, I'd say.
Well, I think, it's probably, I would say maybe good to not do that. If it sounds terrible, you probably should get out, and now you're close. Maybe it'll be great when you go back. It'll be perfect timing.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Yep.
Sorry to laugh about life like that. It might not be well received. Cool. Luna, Nicole, do you want me, or I can go?
I don't mind going now. Yeah.
Luna, please.
Yeah, I'm Luna, and it was so nice, just hearing your guys' background stories. I don't know, I love hearing other people's stories. It's just like, it's really interesting and fun to hear. I'm from South Africa, but I'm currently living in Greece. I love traveling. Okay, roles and titles. I also don't really have any roles or titles. I'm a university student. I'm studying medicine, which is hard. It's a lot of work, a lot of facts. I have 2 years left of medical school. And it's just a lot of work, but outside of like medicine and like the factual scientific world, I have a lot of random hobbies. I love creative stuff, which I think is why I got drawn to this course. I actually found it via social media. I love watching their videos. I enjoy learning about like spirituality, love all things spiritual, different religions, love doing art and doodles. Just really enjoy learning, creativity. I also used to be an ice skater, so there's ice skating and dance. So those are all the things on the side. I don't really know how to define myself. I can be a bit of a chaotic person, a little bit all over the place. That's pretty much it for titles. Student and enjoy creative hobbies. And for the good life, I think for me, the good life is having inner peace and joy. I think when I'm able to find joy in just everyday life and all the little things, that really feels like the good life to me. And then also, I guess I have dreams of like bridging traditional Western medicine with like more holistic approaches and spirituality and other things I've learned from all together, and like, I don't know, creating a new kind of healthcare practice or something. So I'd love to like bridge everything I've learned together. That would be a good life for me. And I really want to help people. That's how I got into medicine. Just making the world a better place. Yeah. Wow, sorry if that was rambly. I tend to like ramble a lot, but yeah, just want to make the world a better place.
As
Hear,
Led
hear.
Zeppelin famously said, "Ramble on." Just
Yeah,
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
I also got way into comparative psychology, kind of Eastern and Western approaches to human experience. I
It's
still
so
think
fascinating.
Buddhist psychology is an incredibly robust and comprehensive and watertight approach to human experience, dividing it between skillful and unskillful mental habits, skillful and unskillful mental patterns, laying it all out. I don't know why you can get a psychology degree in the United States and not encounter a 2,000-year-old tradition that lays it out in a very compelling and interesting way, just at least to think about.
We've done it
So-
so well in the West.
Yeah, that's why.
You
You don't
know,
need any help. Figured it out.
yeah, it's fun.
It's
Well, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no,
Back to you,
Mark.
Sean. Yeah, you were going to
No,
introduce
Mark.
yourself too. Well, who am
You
I?
go.
Who am I? I'm just a talkative, chatty guy.
Good.
Back to you, Sean. You're leading this thing.
No, actually, I'm not leading this thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, I am and I'm not. One of the things I want to unlearn here is the idea that the teacher has any kind of privileged access to what's important than the students do. So this is not like teacher in the upper left, upper right, above everybody and the students in the classroom. That's bullshit. This is a container. It's actually not bullshit. It actually has a lot of practical uses. This is a container where we are trying to set up an atmosphere where we can learn from each other. So I actually really appreciate, Mark, you saying, Nicoel, go. That was helpful. I'm not so
Work training.
yeah. I honestly, I bill myself as the lead learner because I'm like the one that is willing to do this. This will be the 11th time I've done this. And I have unique goals that for this one. And they're not really goals. It's like I don't know how to describe it. I'll get to that kind of. So yeah, that we're unlearning two things today, hopefully. And we don't unlearn things overnight. I'm just really challenging what we've learned. One is this outcome orientation of education. So it's completely okay to not know where exactly we're going if we focus our attention on the present moment and what's happening in a way to interrogate and understand a little bit more about, I'm noticing that I'm noticing I might be oversharing. I'm maybe, or maybe not. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're paying attention to where we are now, not where we're going. And then the second one is that I don't have any, this is not like me. The wisdom workshop is not me being like, oh, except for what you said, Charlie. There's some things I feel really strong about, like, but in general, we're just sharing our perspectives, I hope. I.e., Nicoel might have something more important for Mark than Sean does. She probably does. You know what I'm saying?
I was laughing
Nicoel,
about that.
over to you.
That was a good transition. I liked it. Yeah.
I think this is cute.
Thanks.
I mean, Sean knows me well enough to know I'm all about inversions and locating the things that are reductionist. So and how we can invert things in different places to come to new, to see what's missing or what is there, but we're not seeing. So I appreciate all that. But what I've heard and what I really like so far is we've got a chemist, we've got insurance risk manager, we've got which I don't know if that's the appropriate title, Mark, but there's insurance and risk, and I think that's really poetic. I think all of these are really poetic. Like chemistry to me is very poetic. When you're looking at insurance and you're trying to, have risk assessment in that, I think that's very poetic. And then Luna, in terms of really sitting at the mix of art and science, which I think is also incredibly poetic. And that I'm I sit in art and tech, but I I like a lot. I mean, technology and science are, it's all married to me. So, and I mean, I guess just to give a blip, I kind of reject titles because I feel like that's more of like, the Western way of identifying our achievements and or some kind of identity that is socially understood. And I think it's great that we don't have to totally understand each other, and there can be some mystery, and certainly outside of our socializations. So I'll just say that, I mean, just to kind of conform a bit. I mean, I studied everything I love. So I studied philosophy and art and psychology and theology. And then I started businesses at quite a young age. And then, so to me, mixing, I'm really interested in human systems and understanding the art of processing. And that for me is kind of requires a bit of chemistry. Charlie. And so I think what I'm hearing is in this group, there's a lot of, I think that each one of us, can teach, right? I think that there's a certain alchemy and there's an enormous amount of metaphor that Charlie can teach us that just scientists don't necessarily apply to the art of processing or to human systems, but the knowledge is there. Same with medical, right? Like biology, and with dance. I'm also a dancer, Luna. So that's a huge metaphor for me always. Dancing is like my kind of go-to metaphor. And then assessing risk. And then I know Sean well enough to, the philosophy and Buddhism, Sean and I have a lot of overlap, which is maybe why he likes me. I don't know. But I think these are tools, right, that we just don't apply. We're not trained to apply to different things. And that's what I'm about. Like, I'm really about taking all of these tools and seeing the constellations and finding the connections that are there that we're just not seeing because it tends to be more complicated. So I'm really interested in investing in reality, the reality that is far more complex than what humans are comfortable with, or that we're really devoted to engaging because it hurts our brains and very uncomfortable, and there's a lot of risk and blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of, that's what I heard. Over to you, Shawnee boy.
Well, I refuse to title why I like you, Nicole, because it's it's not a static thing. I really appreciate on the points of praise you synthesizing everything that came before you. That was very skillful. That's what I noticed. I also noticed Luna get really excited when you talked about the poetry of biology and dance.
Yeah. That does excite me.
I really love that. And any of these things, I hope we're not doing like official note taking until week 3 as like a mode of using our attention, but like an aha, or like noticing things that are like when our attention goes like, whoa, you just said poetry of biology and dance. Like, note those things because they
And
give
chemistry
like,
and risk. Like,
yes.
this the whole thing is very poetic. Like,
Yeah.
chemistry is incredibly poetic. Engaging risk and damage and destruction. I mean, that's incredibly poetic.
There were two things that stuck out for me. One, I did take some notes. I wrote that down. I wrote assessing risk. I drew a line and wrote poetic question mark. And I was like, I'm a lover of poetry, and it's the first time I've heard or even encountered the thought that what I do for my day job could be poetic. So thank you. I'm going to chew on that for a long time. And then the other thing I really liked was you said, speaking about reality and its complexity at a level more than human beings were used to engaging in. I thought that was really interesting. And so what it struck me is you're interested in looking at details. And you mentioned poetry, but I think about how language stretches to its limit, and then it's really hard to express some things. We're human beings. We know what this is like. We struggle to put it down in words. I struggle in my job to explain some very technical, the inner workings of these models and how we have confidence describing things that heretofore we didn't have tools to say what the probability of a certain level of destruction would be next year. We have these tools today, but when somebody says, well, how do you know that? I struggle, but it's also my job to do it. So I kind of enjoy that. I struggle. Anyway, thanks. Those were the things I really enjoyed. So glad you're here, Nicole.
Something that I never picked up on that I thought was really cool was like, I mean, if you really think about it, like at the end of the day, like we're all, even though we're all in like all these different fields, it's all dealing with like pretty much like complicated systems where you're just kind of looking at like different like scale of like what you're looking at. Like in chemistry, like I look at like individual molecules and building blocks, or versus like medicine, you're looking at like someone's body and their all the intricate systems that are woven there. Or if you're dealing with like people, risk management, you're dealing with like all your different clients and trying to like figuring out different things. So I think there is like a lot of like applicational overlap that we may not immediately realize, especially like I'm not super great at modeling, but I've done a decent amount of chemical modeling with like learning how to model like electrons and different like elements and different like behavior of like small particles and never actually figure out in real life we can model. So I mean, it's, yeah, like I definitely enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, but it is not easy to explain to other people at all whatsoever. Definitely agree with that.
So you brought in models is really interesting. Nicole, please, sorry.
No, you know me, Sean, I'm Italian, so I'm like quick. So I'm watching, but please, you go ahead.
Well, I was honestly, you didn't say what I mean, you kind of did actually. Constellations of tools and kind of, is that, can you say a little bit more about the good life? You didn't
Well, what
really,
I didn't really talk about the good life. Well,
kind of did, maybe.
Everything is kind of an illusion, right, to certain things. But no, I don't think there is much of I don't think there is
Oh.
much of a good life. I honestly don't think that. I don't believe that there is a good life. I think that there's moments of good. And I think that there's something that's important. I mean, aspirations are important. But I'm interested in increasing whatever the good is and reducing the suffering of others. And I think those are kind of the two elements that make my existence worth it. Is if I can increase the good and reduce the suffering of others, then I feel like that's a worthy life to live. And then inside those things, like there's moments, but I think really the truth is that life is far more suffering than it is good. And so how do we understand that suffering is a part of the good? And we can talk about this more, but I'm a tragedian, right? Which is the philosophical ancient, was before Plato, and was really examining beauty and horror and how they're married and essential. And so I don't really like the framing of the good life, even though I do understand that is a very philosophical, important discussion. So I love that. And yet I think there's something presumptuous about it without giving it a lot of context in the realm of suffering.
What a wonderfully philosophical response to the query.
You can count on me.
I know, and it's honest too, right? And the other thing that, one of the things about your work that struck me, Nicole, is this. Tell me if I'm misrepresenting this. One of the great challenges we have in interpersonal relationships is our inability to, or our unwillingness to experience painful, difficult things with people. So we avoid them. We don't want to go there. And then somehow it's like, actually, that avoidance is actually like making things worse. It's like, don't bother me, I'm trying to live a good life. Well, actually, that's going to kick your ass. Does that track?
Exactly. Yeah, and what I like about you, Sean, and this, and just people like you, is that if we learn to be less personally offended at confrontation,
Beautiful. Great.
right? Like you're really good at. I mean, I'm. My ideas can be very confrontational, and some people
Are
will
you
take it
questioning the
personally.
entire underlining principle of this course I've spent the last 3 years of my life creating? How dare you?
No, and you know that I actually understand exactly where you're coming from, and I completely
Oh.
agree with it. But what I love about you is that a lot of people are not like that. They're not kind of okay, not just okay, but looking for. And I think you do. I think you embrace a lot of my divergent thinking, which I call positive deviance, which I talk a lot about the importance of positive deviance.
Great.
And some people, they just get overly unsettled by it. So I appreciate that you invite that, and that doesn't threaten you. And I think that that's exactly some of the strength of character that I think gets us to some of these places that we're trying to get to. And I don't even like that language, because I don't think we can actually get to places. As soon as we try to get to places, which you alluded to this, which I loved, is then we kind of lose. Yeah, it's not. So I don't mean it that way. I mean in terms of are useful. That become more useful when you're open and we're less afraid of being challenged or confronted in some ways, or that's how we grow. and or we see something different, and it doesn't make me right, by the way. Like my ideas, I'm not committed to. I could be completely wrong. so that's the other
Nicole,
piece.
I pray you are, because you know what I loved about it. But Nicole, I've never
Is it Nicole?
Yeah, Nicole.
How do you say your name?
Yeah, it's Nicole. It's Nicole.
Okay, I'll work on that. Nicole, you said positive deviance, and I think you have the title of your new book, or maybe that's one of the titles you can occasionally put on, Positive Deviant.
Title. There you go.
Because I want to say, while I was listening to you, and I was thinking, wait a second, I think fundamentally maybe I disagree.
Great.
But nevertheless, there's something in the tone, and you just sort of button it up at the end there. You're open to be in dialogue around these ideas, and that sort of comes through.
Yeah, the point is to have conversation. I mean, and that's something that I think a lot of people don't get. They're assuming that I have arrogance, or others like there's people who have strongly said opinions. There's an assumption that there's arrogance there. With me, there's really not. It's just like, well, I could be wrong. This is just what I think right now. It's all provisional. It's all provisional, which is really the best science. Speak to us, Charlie, right? And Luna, right? Like this is the best information that we're operating on right now. That doesn't mean it couldn't, new study comes out tomorrow and fucks all that up,
And
Absolutely.
Mark, I'm curious. I want to give Mark some space to finish, because it seems like Mark's was in mid thought still. Am I misseeing?
I wrote down tragedian, and I'm intrigued by that. You said how beauty and
tragedy, or beauty and horror are wed.
Beauty and horror, how they're mixed and how they interact. I just think that I hope that there is a chance later to have more dialogue around these, maybe even the sidebar around this. I'd be fascinated to talk to you about how you came to your views, and I don't know, maybe have a philosophical discussion. It seems like
we're having one.
Yeah, we are. It's fun.
And I also, before I know Charlie wants to get in here, I think for me the motive makes a big difference. Like your sense of like I'm questioning all this because I care, instead of I'm questioning all this to you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I think that matters to me, which is ultimately why I extended the invitation. I think you might blow things
Sean,
up in a productive, caring way.
Yes, here's a couple of the principles of who I am. One, I'm committed to regeneration, which requires destruction, which requires us to be broken and then repair, broken, repair, and particularly inside systems, right? Human systems, that's my biggest commitment of all the systems. And then regeneration requires us to be broken. So similarly as to getting into the gym and building stronger muscles. Luna can talk to us about that. But, so that, and then to me, the good life, I think, requires us to be undone. And humans are mostly committed to not being undone. And that is kind of the basis of my work, and not just my work, because it's all related to me, but who I am.
Well, I've heard a lot of different answers on what is the good life. And I don't think anyone has quite said being undone as part of it. So I thank you for this. And it looks like Charlie and Luna want to get in here. I want to make space for them in case they do.
One thing I was gonna say really quickly is like I don't have a ton of experience with like philosophy and stuff, at least traditionally education wise. But one thing that I'm very appreciative of is that I'm like still young enough that like I'm like completely open to like anything. Like when I like hear somebody say something, even if it's like doesn't necessarily completely line up with like the way I see things, I don't try and push it away. I just try and like integrate it instead, which I am grateful for.
I also,
The curiosity on that is, Sean, is chemistry. Isn't that a good chemistry? I mean, my excitement is for eventually, Charlie, for you to speak to this. I mean, not now, but eventually for you to speak to what does that actually look like scientifically, and how are we able as humans to do that, to translate that into our learning? How do we become good chemists in our learning process? Sorry, Sean, I just had.
No, that's good. And I think, I put the chemistry of Socratic discussion in there. I'm kind of breaking different ideas down, recombinating ideas. And, the good life isn't really a thing. There's moments of goodness, but to say the whole thing. And, I would disagree with that, at least from the perspective of the moment that we die, which is Aristotle says very interestingly, we're not in a position to say whether or not we're living a good life until the moment of our death, because at that point we can look at the whole thing and say good or not. And he has a very specific definition of good, but our life only exists, like only at the moment of our death does our life exist in its entirety, when we actually enter out of the illusion of space-time, if we want to go all Donald Hoffman on it. But so I just love that you challenged that, honestly, because I think it really is one of the obstacles to happiness, or one of the obstacles of living a good life is like, oh, my coffee cup's empty. Am I no longer living the good life? And it's like, no, that's actually part of it. Like, you're going to be thirsty and you're going to encounter some difficult situations.
Well, that's where we converge, Sean. And this, I think,
Correct.
and that's more interesting to me, is that usually when people discuss the good life, they don't put it in a more complex,
Correct.
which I think is more real context. And now we agree with that context, because there's grief there, there's loss there, there's suffering there, all of the things that you just admitted, which are rarely, at least initially in initial conversations, I think philosophy does a decent job at kind of investigating some of those things. So.
Mark, you look like you're on the edge of your mind.
Yeah. You're a very good observer. I was thinking of Luna and how I think at the edges of psychological research and exploration is this question around whether or not suffering is bad or good, right? Psychological suffering, because we've all had the experience where we've learned from painful experiences.
Yep.
and or it's been that catalyst to transform something, or for something new to be born. I like your undone. That's really good. The undone, like a knot undoing itself, or a molecule maybe. Yeah. But yeah, so I have friends who teach mindfulness, and they let me know, I didn't know this, but they let me know that there's a very active debate around whether, I don't know, some level of painful engagement in an experience can be good versus the removal, or the Buddhist. I haven't studied this, so through this class I can learn more about that question. I'd be fascinated. Sean, maybe you have something to say about that.
Yeah, and really quickly on that, there is a sense that one of the teachers that I had basically said, you don't want this enough. You're not in enough pain to really take this that seriously. So basically, like, let me know when you're actually serious about this. And
Mhm.
usually for most people, like, it takes like a moment where you're like really actually fed up with the unnecessary suffering that the way you're engaging with the world is creating. So I'm like, I'm really interested in this. And she's like, you say you are.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what? Excuse me? And she was actually really perceptive in that. And that idea of come back to me when you really are fed up with how unskillful you are. And then you'll have the effort and interest to actually. And so yeah, it is. And there's a lot of debates even inside Buddhist philosophy. Gradual versus sudden enlightenment being the big one. It's like, are we using all this? But we're generally united if in Buddhist philosophy to eliminate the causes of unnecessary suffering. So suffering happens. To suffer about the suffering, to be like this kind of dis-ease. It's interesting. Like the first noble truth of Buddhism we usually hear is life is suffering, which the Sanskrit is dukkha. Oops, sorry, that comment, I just put it in there. In Sanskrit actually means like dis-ease. So like not being at ease, or a kind of ill at easeness, kind of free floating anxiety and pain. And it's like a very difficult word to define. It just gets translated in English as suffering. So, I mean, the other is it's a desiring to alleviate that. Like, I hope to remove the causes of my unnecessary suffering for myself. That's generally like what the whole path is about in Buddhism, as I understand it. And there's a degree of skillfulness that we can approach that with. Okay, I actually want to loop back to the experience of free writing, because at least in the this course really is inspired a lot by Buddhist philosophy. Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones is like partially her experience with her Zen teacher, who she decided was like one of the moments that she really decided to study this teacher was when she saw his back, like the way he turned in the room. She was enchanted with his back, not in like a ooh muscular back, but in like the presence of this man was so commanding and so felt that she's like, who gets your attention by the way they turn away from someone in a room? Anyway, super present. I bring that up because that's kind of the goal for today. People who are this Zen master, who was taught in Madison, Wisconsin, was super, super present. And so drawing from that philosophy, the first stage in the Buddhist path of meditation is mindfulness. We begin with a kind of, again, non-judgmental awareness of the present. It's actually very dangerous to try to reach to insight meditation, which destabilizes everything. At least like the highest levels of meditation are dangerous unless you have a basis of mindful, non-judgmental awareness. It actually goes mindfulness, sati, into concentration, into insight. We're not doing that, but we are like using some of that framework, and it begins with mindfulness. On that note, for those of us who have the 0 or 1 in our free writing experience, how was that experience of free writing? I do want to actually, not what you wrote, but the experience of doing it. Curious about, I want to hear some reflections on what that experience was like.
So I said 0 originally, but I mean, even though I don't like really free write like that very much, like I did kind of realize like I do some mindfulness exercises. I mean, if I'm trying to be mindful, then usually like, my favorite exercise to do is like I don't know if you ever heard of it, but it's where you kind of like you just close your eyes and you focus on one part of the body at the time and focus on like what that part of the body is feeling.
Yeah.
My favorite way to kind of like put all other like thoughts on my mind and just kind of like try and be as zen as possible. But outside of that, like I don't really do much free writing, but the closest thing that I really do is like taking notes. Like if there's ever, regardless of like what class it is or subject, or if it's in school, out of school, whatever it is, if it's something that interests me, the best way for me to learn about like anything is literally just to like take notes on whatever that. All I need is like a textbook on the subject, and I can just like take notes and like learn
Yes.
that one.
And so did it feel like when you did this free writing exercise, I'm curious how that compared or contrasted to your otherwise experience of just noting as you're noting what's important. Did it feel like there was kind of note taking on what's going on in your brain, or did it feel totally different?
I don't know. I mean, it was like slightly more mindful than I would say normally I would be with like note taking, but probably not by that much more. Just because like I'm so used to like writing like scientific stuff.
Yeah.
Scientific papers so it's like basically like what I write is like facts. I write
Yeah.
facts, informations, and details, stuff like that. Like I don't throw in any
Yeah.
words that are like trying to like show more. I'm just showing exactly like this is what I found. This is how I got there. That's it. So I don't know. It's a little bit hard for me to kind of like go do a more free form when I'm so used to that. But I also think it's also a good and helpful thing to do. So
Cool. Thanks for sharing that, because where I got my morning pages practice from Julia Cameron, my writing practice, she says of all the people she teaches, writers have the hardest time getting a lot out of this practice because they're so used to, they've had so much time and habits writing that to ask them to just write whatever is in their minds down without judging it, they don't, that's not what they do. You're constantly assessing whether or not what you're writing is worth keeping or not. And you're selecting what to write. That's not what, so it is like, I'm glad that you brought that up. That's a challenge. Good, thanks. Other experiential reflections, like what it was like to do that writing exercise? Luna?
For me, it's like I could feel my mind drifting, and like I can see I even wrote down like, oh, is my mind drifting? And other little like I suppose judgments came in like, is this a valid enough idea of a good life? And I'm like,
Great.
oh, I'm judging myself. And then I would go back to the question, and yeah, it was just like really interesting watching my train of thought. I even wrote down like, oh, what was the question? Let me come back to it. But like trying to learn not to judge myself and what I was writing. But it also felt really weird to write without a goal, like without an essay. And, you know, like this wasn't a multiple choice question. This wasn't an essay. It was just like, what's in my head? And it felt weird just to get that out. And for me, I also noticed like a little bit of anxiety because I was like, wow, like how much is going on in my head? Like,
Great.
am I actually going to get it out? It was interesting to watch what was happening in my head. Yeah.
So good to hear that. This ideally, and my meditation teacher said you should practice mindfulness for 1 minute a day when you start. Any longer than that, you might be. So I hope that you do something like this as an experiment for just a little bit of time period each day. Preferably early in the morning is almost easier to do it because your mind isn't as racing. And so you're kind of just like, when you're like, that's a great place to actually start doing it, because you can just kind of get out there and you notice things, and it might actually be really surprising what comes up sometimes. You're like, oh wow. Or writing down your dreams, if you're into that kind of thing, is another place that's a good place to start. But I'm glad that you said all that, because I think that's helpful. I know for me, since I have done it so much, it almost is like it's like almost like a it's become more of like a refuge for me. So when I start to be like, here we go, I'm kind of like settling in. I have the association of writing as like self-care. So I'm like, here we go. It's like, just ends up being kind of like relaxing for me. That's not how it was when I started. It was more like, whoa. And that's almost like that hyper attention of what's happening is kind of disconcerting, or at least might be.
Yeah, I think maybe I have like I don't know, maybe my body mind has a slightly negative association with writing just because of like essays, university, all of that. So to just like let myself enjoy it feels weird. Yeah.
Cool experiment.
one thing that was like a little bit tricky for me was like it's hard for me to just like constantly like keep writing, because like I'm so used to like having my writing be a thing where it's like every single word that like I'm used to using has to be necessary. If it's not necessary, then you cut it out, because no one wants to read more than they have to about like a scientific article. Like every single word has to like be serving some purpose. So it's very hard for me to like I found myself like there were times where my head just like went blank, where I just like wasn't next like sure where I was necessarily going. I had to like just like take a second to like re-grip myself on like where I was trying to head with this like directionally.
That's why, and I think just remember that we're not, in fact, it's kind of a bad idea to read what you've written at first. So like I wouldn't read what you've written just because it gets into this like, oh, how good is this? That's not what we're trying to do. We're just using it as a tool to be aware and pay more attention to what's actually going on, and then make connections as that happens. So you're not writing for anyone. And even, if you want to burn it, you might also experiment with like writing on the back of envelopes that you're going to throw away, because it also takes the pressure off of like me doing something for posterity.
Yeah.
It's just writing. I tried to start a journaling habit in big, like nice journals. Thanks, Mom. What a nice journal. And I would start it and then just feels oppressive. It wasn't until I found these pocket moleskins journals that I was like, I can just put this in my pocket. It doesn't matter, that I gave myself the room to be like, cool. Doesn't matter. And then it feels good. So I would encourage you to play with this writing as just a tool of kind of presencing yourself in the moment, and see if that is something that works for you. Might not. Mark, your experience?
Yeah, what you said about trying to start a journaling practice before and struggling, I've run into that too, where I tried to start a writing practice. I think I create a lot of pressure for myself, and I care a great deal about the quality of the product, and I want to say profound things, and I just want it to be Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays, and not only is it not, but I can't produce a thing because I get my own way. But so I like approaching this. It feels like from a totally different angle. I think because I like the topic of a good life, it actually sort of got the juices flowing for me, and I was able to not get out of my own way and just kind of write some stuff. So I enjoyed the exercise. I'm hopeful I sort of try and practice this non-judgment thing, that maybe I can get out of my own way.
This is a good opportunity for me to kind of say a little bit more about the module 1 writing invitations that I sent you and how I would approach them based on participant feedback in the past. I am over giving you stuff. Do not feel it can start to feel like school, where it's like, oh no, it's day 2 of the Wisdom Workshop and I'm already behind. No, you're not. We're not going anywhere. How could you be behind if we don't have a destination? Instead, it's like, there's 2 things. I would look at those invitations and see if any of them pop out to you. I did sequence them in a way. Like, it is like you could do, this is day 1, which actually starts tomorrow. This is day 1, or today, depending on how you want to say it. This is day 1. This is my writing. This is day 2. This is my writing. This is day 3. I would try to do some writing every day, but you don't need to follow along exactly. It can be kind of more haphazard. The second thing is, so you might just look at that and see what of those stand out to you. If something is like, ooh, I could write on this, write on that. Otherwise, go for the jugular. What's alive for you right now? Reflecting, other go-tos for people that help, that have some science behind them, is just writing what you're grateful for. So if you get to the page and you're like, I don't know what to write down 3 things that you're grateful for. More specific, the better. I also like to write about what stood out to me today, like what seemed significant today at the end of the day. Benjamin Franklin wrote about what good might I do today in the morning, and then at night he wrote, what good did I do today? That's an interesting framing. Suggests that we don't actually know the good that we're doing sometimes. sometimes what we think we might do is good is actually not helpful at all. So that's another thing. The other thing that I just want to introduce, and this will kind of be the final thing, we can just kind of start wrapping. You have like a weekly invitation or a weekly challenge each time to engage with your writing in a new way. This weekly challenge is on writing a contract, a creative contract between you and you. And there's two aspects to that creative contract that make it work and make it magic. One is a daily commitment. What are you going to do every day? Come back to this a lot in my thinking, like who we are is what we repeatedly do. If you care about something, you should be doing it every day, even if it's just for 1 minute. You could challenge me on that, but I think it's important. 2, what do we want to do every week on another cycle of time? That might be like every week I want to take 45 minutes to do what do you want to do every week? The other part of that contract is that giving yourself a little bit more of an opportunity to use these 7 weeks as like a self-nurturing container, to maybe commit to making better food for yourself, taking more exercise, seeing more friends. What kinds of things might you do to support yourself? Things might come up that are surprising, and we want to kind of nurture ourselves as much as we can. It also just feels better, so it's positively reinforcing. It's like, this is a good time box to be like, for the next 7 weeks, I'm going to actually, every day I'm going to do this, every week I'm going to do this, and in general, I'm going to do these things for myself. I don't want to require anything in this class because I think that's I want this to be up to you. But I think the creative contract and thinking about like, what do I want to do every day and what do I want to do every week that's going to help me, whatever it is that I'm doing, is a big important piece for me. Also, if you're like me and you want to use this to kind of launch something, like if you're starting a Substack or if you're doing something that you like, some kind of a project, doing really well on your upcoming exam, I don't know. You might build that in as well. So like, what kinds of things do I want to do to launch this thing that I'm building? Charlie, you might start a business in the next 7 weeks. I have no idea. You know what I'm saying? Probably not, but whatever. Get what I'm saying? I'm mentioning this because I'm hoping that this is like the first step to your creative participation with this material that's meant to give you the opportunity to do what you might do in it. I also want to, last thing I'll say, it's fine if you have no idea what that is. So we don't start with purpose because sometimes purpose is emergent. It's not like, why are we here? Because they might not know. That's why we're starting with presence and not purpose. Does that all kind of make sense? Or maybe not sense, but at least like give us some bearing to, because most of this is going to happen in between our meetings. And then the next time we'll be able to be like, so guess what? And ideally some chemistry will happen. Recombinations. That's my pitch. I am Sean, I'm complete.
No, thanks. I think that was helpful. I didn't get to look at it. This content's in the email?
It is. And I'll link to Google Drive that's going to have, I'm also procedurally, I'm going to send an email out within 24 hours. It'll usually be either tonight or tomorrow afternoon, actually. It might take me more like 30 hours to get out the replay with some of my notes and some of the other stuff.
Okay. If you named kind of a couple things, there's one thing that's most important that we sort of consider completing before the next time we get together, what is that? Is that the creative contract and try and the daily sit down to write something?
Exactly what I was going to say. Daily sit down, 5 minutes a day. I would go for 25 minutes a day to really like kind of build in your capacity, but at least 5 minutes a day. I'd say so between 5 and 25 minutes a day of free writing. The prompts that I'm giving you should give you like a big like basis to write from. There's also all of the books, the 2 books, Writing Down the Bones, and we're going to kind of toggle between left brain, right brain, creative, logical throughout the course. This first one is going to be on the creative. Next one's going to be logical, creative, logical, creative, logical. The readings are all on the Amazon on the free preview for the first week. So the things, if you want to spend some time reading, I would read what's in the first week invitations to see if you like love the books, and I would get them. Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way is a little flu. It's a little a course in discovering and recovering your creative self, a spiritual path to higher creativity. I generally avoid books with titles like that, except my mom recommended this one to me, and then someone else recommended it to me. And when I did, I read it in a summer when I was 32, 8 years ago, and it blew my mind. It was really helpful, mainly because it put me in touch with my inner child, and I like my inner child. So if you want to get in touch with your inner child, I would get Julia Cameron's book. If you're kind of allergic to that framing, I would avoid Julia Cameron's book. I love Natalie Goldberg's book. Writing Down the Bones is fucking phenomenal. Pardon my language. It's really good. I think it's a great approach to what I'm hoping writing as a tool to be more present to our bones, like to the core of what makes us move. I think the subtitle on that is On Freeing the Writer Within. But it's really about like that's kind of marketing speak for people that want to be writers. I think it's really about being present in our experience. It's like part Zen philosophy, part free writing. Freaking brilliant. She's great. All right. Nicole, you've been quiet. Anything else?
No, I'm just
Digging it?
I'm here for it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Funny, the only other thing on my notes to end is this definition of communitas. Have we heard this noun before? We've heard community, right? We know community. Community is a gathering of people, right? I'm hoping to kind of build communitas here. We're already kind of doing this. But we are hopefully equal. This is actually like maybe this is the interplay between social structure and anti-structure. So we're kind of in an anti-structure here. I'm hoping it's a structure anti-structure thing. Point is that we're ideally equal as we move forward, and that I hope, and it already feels like this is happening, where we kind of respect and appreciate that we each might have something to teach, that we're in a unique position to teach. Charlie can tell us things that nobody else can. And I think that's the great, if we accept that, we have like a great community agreement. Cool.
Here.
Yeah.
I hope this is exciting and inspiring. And I also, the only other thing is that you are, as part of the course, I do want to be available if you want to reach out. So please feel free to, if you want to talk about a project that you're working on, concerns that you have, ideas that you want to move forward with, or around. We'll go till about like 1:50. We'll go till 1:15, 15 after to 30, but we'll definitely end before 30. So this first one's a little longer. We'll do introductions. Cool. Enjoy. I'll send an email out tomorrow, and be well, be well, be well. Hey.
Say hi.
Hi,
What's your name?
Ryan.
Liam.
Liam.
This is
Oh,
Liam. Meet
Liam, you came at a
Sean.
good time.
Yeah. This is Luna. Can you believe it?
I'll let you get out here.
Okay, I'll let you get out of here. All right, nice to meet you guys.
All right, we'll see everybody next time.
Bye.